she said. After you finish eating, you will need to go and do your schoolwork and have the dishes clean by the time old man will get home from work. Well, Roderick didn't like the sound of that and started to mumble under his breath while knitting his eyebrows together. Work, work, work. That's all they always want me to do. Roderick mumbled while he held a face that looked as though he was constipated. When Mother Roll came back in the room, she saw Roderick's face and kissed her teeth. Roderick, stop all that complaining and behave. Now I going out, you better be finished with everything by 5:30 or else dog eat your lunch. Remember, boy, when you can't hear, you just feel. Hesitantly, Roderick got up and started doing his schoolwork, but that didn't last long because he heard his friends outside playing. Suddenly, he got a bright idea when he glanced at the clock. It's only 12 o'clock. If I go play now until 4 o'clock, that could give me enough time to finish my work before old man will reach home. He burst out with laughter as he thought his plan was brilliant. With that time always goes fast when you're having fun. Oh, I have plenty of time, man. It's only 2 o'clock, said Roderick as he checked the time the first go round. He continued to play and the time continued to move along. As the kids played, the weather started to get worse and it started to rain. When Roderick checked the time, it was though he caught a ride. It was as though time had caught a ride. Oh boy, he knew he messed up. It was approximately 5 p.m. and he had way too much things to do. Roderick took off toward the house with so much speed, you would have thought the devil himself was after him. As he rushed to get everything done, the weather outside seemed to be angry with him. The thunder roared and lightning clashed as a raging storm was approaching. He raced against the clock, trying to do as much as he could, but time just wasn't on his side. He rushed to get his schoolwork done, and by now it was already 5:15 p.m. Roderick's little old heart was now in his throat. He shivered like a leaf with fright. He cleaned his room to the best of his abilities. Now he only had to clear the table and clean the dishes. He moved as though there was a fire under his hips, and the thunder outside reminded him of Old Man Roll's angry voice. As he hurriedly washed the dishes, Roderick glanced up at the clock, and it was now 5:25 p.m. 30 pots was still piled up, along with the enormous pot that he had to scrub. His heart was racing. Sweat was pouring down his back, and the storm outside was yelling out to him all at once. Roderick tried saying a little prayer, promising God that he would never, ever be disobedient again. While doing his best to scrub Mama Roll's soup pot, the thunder roared louder than ever. Suddenly, the loudest and brightest flash of lightning struck, and sad to say, poor Roderick was in the wrong place. As he started to rinse the pot, the lightning entered the window, striking the pot that he was holding. It sent a shock throughout his body, knocking him out cold. For what seemed like an eternity, he found himself falling to the kitchen floor. He tried to scream for help, but his voice had gone on a vacation. He awoke to the cries of his mother, who had somehow lifted his limp body to the bedroom, where she was soaking his head with rubbing alcohol. He asked her, what happened? She told him that he had been hit by the lightning and that she had found him curled up just like a sleeping cat. Shortly after, Old Man Roll arrived and was briefed on what had happened. He did not seem bothered one bit by what had transpired. His only comment was, maybe next time you can listen to your mom. When you can't hear, you just feel. And from that day, Roderick jumps whenever he hears the thunder grumble or see a lightning bolt whip at the earth. But most importantly, He does any work given to him as soon as he is told. Ivan Boban, Nikita's story has now come to an end. What a wonderful story. Did you all enjoy Nikita's story? And before I pass the floor over to Daniel, there were a few elements of the Bahamian oral traditions in there. Can anyone just name off the top of their head which one like just stood out? Don't speak all at once now.
She had some really good Bahamian sayings in there.
Yeah, she had really, really good Bahamian sayings. And of course, her story, like most Bahamian stories, had a message. When you don't hear, you just feel. So essentially, her story is telling us that Roderick should have listened to his mother and did his work when he was supposed to, or else he would have never get struck by lightning. What an expensive lesson to pay. Thank God Roderick didn't die. But that was such a good story. Is Azaria present? She still isn't present, hey? No. All right, so we will go on and continue. Danielle, I will have you present your story next. So just a little bit about Danielle, guys. Danielle's full name is Daniel Hernandez Isaac, and he is 26 years old. He's originally from Foxville. He comes from the heart of New Providence, Bahamian storytelling town. And he moved to the Bahamas at 9 years old after having been raised in Houston, Texas. Now, he just recently moved back home just before COVID struck and quarantine began. He's a history major and he's working towards teaching with plans to continue on to law school. So let's wish Daniel a very successful journey as he amalgamates history, law, and Bahamian culture. Now, the story he's about to read was birthed mainly from his love of music, of literary fiction, and fantasy. Now, not having grown up fully in the Bahamas and never visiting home until his most recent return, his exposure to Bahamian literature and our oral traditions is a bit limited. However, he would still like to share his story because I don't think anything can be seen as less Bahamian, eh, Danielle? All right, so can you go ahead and share your story for us?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you for that very great introduction. Um, you mentioned me being from Foxville too. It's funny because I grew up hearing a lot of stories that I didn't really think about as like, oral traditions as much as just like, oh, that's my family history, that's what Daddy John did. And that's what his dad Josiah did, So I didn't think of it as so much oral storytelling as much as just like history is what happened. But it's funny that it kind of does coincide. It really literally does coincide. But anyway, my story is called Espoir, which means hope in Creole, for anyone that does not know.
Okay.
Once upon a place, once upon a time, when monkey chewed tobacco and the wolf sipped wine, there lived a young man who loved music. Now, he's not really sure where his passion came from or how he even learned how to sing and dance or play instruments. But as long as he could remember, he just loved it and he did it. Everywhere the young man went, he would play and sing what he felt in his heart. He traveled many lands all over the world, and the people of these different lands listened to the songs of the young man and reveled. People could not help but to love the music he performed, for it was truly magical. Children danced joyously to his words, and the elderly calmly contemplated the complexity of his lyrics. He joined in thunderous songs of victories past, in taverns and inns with common folk from all four corners of the earth, and his music even graced mighty halls of kings and lords, shining glory and valor on their deeds. He shed tears as he watched love bloom and flower to the tune of his fiddle, and he witnessed enemies put down arms and question their own disputes as they broke bread over the sweet sounds of his music. Animals
Mm.
animals would be rendered tame and docile. Excuse me, lost my place. Animals would be rendered tame and docile when the young man sung. They would follow him and do his bidding, for the animals understand the language of music and they knew the young man to be pure. He was a traveling singer, a bringer of joy who heralds a wondrous time wherever he appears. And he never asked for anything in return. You see, he would sing and dance and play his music whether he was alone or whether he was not. The privilege to perform was enough for the young man, and he never accepted more than what was necessary to survive. He was truly a marvel. The young man carried three things with him wherever he went on his journeys. The first was his fiddle, his prized possession. With his fiddle, he felt at home. It was his lover and his best friend. He couldn't really tell you how he came by the fiddle, but he cannot ever remember being without it. It's a part of him. There have been moments when the violin certainly should have broken, but it did not. Not even a string has ever been broken on this fiddle. It never breaks, it never tarnishes, never splinters, never bends any more than it should. It never needs a tuning or a polishing or a restringing. And the music that flows from the fiddle is truly captivating. It quite literally demands your attention. The second thing the young man always kept was a notebook. Now, the notebook is a little eerie. You see, it was completely blank. There weren't any words written down in the journal, at least as far as anyone else could tell. The young man always simply said, when asked about his blank book, that it contains the stories and songs of a world. He would sometimes forget a lyric or a note and refer to his book, and at these times it seemed to people that he was flipping through and staring at absolutely unmarked pages, but his eyes would flicker and dance and show that he was perceiving something far beyond normal comprehension. He never wrote in the book, but he read from it religiously and cherished it as highly as his beloved fiddle. Now, the final thing the young man know them today as precious stones, but more in their natural form. Think of an uncut gem. One was a stinging yellow, another was a shimmering green. One stood white, brighter than all the rest, and harder than anything in this world. And his personal favorite was a deep obsidian black color, cold to the touch. The stones held real value. They could have made him a very rich man, but he did not know that. He cared simply for their beauty and the power they possess. For when in the right hands and attuned by the light of the moon, the stones radiated and emitted an aura of wonder. He knew not fully the true power of these stones. He just knew that it felt right to keep them on his person, for they simply made him sing and dance and play better. As far as he was concerned, they were just his good luck charms. They were obtained on one of his many travels a long time ago, yet somehow recently. He was in a land fought to still fighting his way through the desert. There were sandstorms and freezing nights. He spent weeks fending off thieves and raiders, and even took time out of his journey to help a lost child find their desert caravan. Deep in the middle of the desert, there was there were deep in the middle of the desert, he encountered a very elderly woman at a small oasis. She was indeed the happiest person the young man had ever encountered, despite her living in complete isolation. She told him with a smile that he cannot rest at her oasis. She said that he must leave at once. Excuse me. She said that he must leave at once and only fill his canteen three-fourths full. She gave him an empty black pouch and she spoke these words: Young man of this world who dance and who sing, please listen up while I tell you this thing. You travel the world doing wondrous work, but your eye ever blind to the evil that lurk. 13 nights you will wander this land, and 13 things you can find in this sand. Lock things in this pouch and don't ever doubt that its meaning will soon be coming about. And when time near, show no fear. Just utter the words that I put right here. She then pointed to a small inscription that seemed to just appear on the pouch. It read, Espoir Pajan Muri. After filling his canteen only three-fourths of the way, he left the oasis in the large desert. Sure enough, he drifted for 13 more nights, and on each night he found one of the stones shimmering beneath the sand. He kept them all sealed within the black pouch, only ever removed to admire the sheer beauty of them. From time to time, the young man would wonder about the full meaning of the elderly woman's song, but most of the time he found too much joy in his life to ever worry about the evil that lurks. The young man very rarely returned to any one place. He spent more than most of his time traveling, and the way he saw it, he would never be able to see the entire world, but he wanted to see all of it. So any time spent idly in one place was time ill spent. Nonetheless, there were still a few number of places that the young man would return to from time to time. One of these places was a small secluded island in an archipelago of about 700 large and small islands and keys. Upon returning to this island of seclusion, the young man felt unsettled. There was a strange, nefarious feeling about. Tension thickened the air, and there was a smell of brimstone and sulfur. The animals that normally chirped and chattered about the island fell silent and invisible. The waves crashed with unyielding ferocity upon the shore, something which was completely foreign to this land. These small subtleties and more told him that something wicked were amiss, and he quickly sung a song to reveal evil spirits. A deep chuckle rumbled from what seemed like within the earth. The ground trembled as from just beyond the tree line and onto the beach walked a ghastly figure. Of humanoid shape, it lumbered over 10 feet tall, and its head was the size of a small child, and its legs towered over the young man. It had 13 arms, 7 on the right side of its torso, and 6 on the left. Despite its terrifying size, its monstrous countenance, its numerous arms, and its air of wickedness, the beast had a way of speaking that was hypnotizing, similar to how a viper hypnotizes its prey before striking. Truly, this beast was cunning and charismatic despite its image. Words slipped past his tongue, smooth as silk. The young man stood solid in the wet sand as the beast chuckled and approached, steps and voice both trembling the earth. I seen your dance and I heard your song, and I'm here to tell you that you're doing it wrong. See, I am the devil, and this is my world, and I won't have no singers not singing my words. The young man looked deep into the midnight eyes of the devil himself and felt no fear. He asked the devil in a calm voice what it was that he wanted. The devil smiled a truly devilish grin and told the boy that he could make him rich and famous beyond his wildest imaginations if he just sang his songs. He explained to the devil that he does not sing and play for money or for power, nor for fame, but simply for the love of playing. The devil was stricken and taken aback by this, but being keen and clever, he saw another opportunity. He knew that the young man loved to play, and the devil himself is the angel of music. The devil told the young man that he has a very rare opportunity to play a song with the devil himself, and this was something that the young man simply could not pass. What harm could come from just playing one song? He agreed, and at that very instant, the devil summoned 6 massive fiddles, which he wielded in 12 of his 13 arms. And with his final free hand, the devil pat a metronome on his large chest. Pit pat a pat, pit pat a pat, pit pat a pat, pit pat a pat. And then suddenly the devil began to play all 6 fiddles in perfect synchronicity. The song being played was a fast one, quick of tempo and difficult to move your finger along to. It was a song the young man had not normally sung amongst mortal people, not ever as far as he was concerned, for it was quite dark and grim and in a tongue long dead to men. Yet he knew the tune and the words thanks to his book, and he soon took up the jam. With a boastful laugh, the devil bellowed, "Ha ha ha! Fool, fool, don't you see? I tricked you into playing with me. Never dance with the devil and don't ever sing or fall victim to the ploys that I will bring. Mimic each sound I make from my fiddle. Don't let it be different, not even a little. And should you make a noise that was not my own, I'll take your soul and your voice to own." It was then that the young man realized his folly. He let himself be fooled into some sort of twisted game with the devil, with his soul and his voice being the prizes to claim. The young man loved to play, and he did not doubt that he could make his fiddle mimic any sound imaginable, yet he could not deny the sense of fear swelling in his gut. For hours, and then days, and then weeks, the boy and the devil played their fiddles on this lost island in the Bahamas. Storms brewed around them from the power of their battle, and thus hurricanes were born. The trees of the island arced and danced to the tune of the devil's music, giving some trees a permanent twist and bend in their trunks. After nearly a month of ceaselessly playing the devil's song, the boy felt the first bit of reality. He could not keep this up forever. Fortunately for the boy, neither could the devil. In a last ditch attempt to make a sound that the boy could never mimic, The devil played the exact same note on all 6 of his massive fiddles. The sound that echoed was monstrous and absurd. It was a roaring sound that curdles the blood and collapses the heart. Indeed, hope abandoned the young man as his dark-skinned face went pale. And then he remembered the pouch and the stones, the words that the woman had told him about the rocks. The young man had not gone a single day without looking into the pouch to gaze upon the eerie stones, and each day he had seen the inscription that seemed to be there only some of the time. Without even noticing, he had mumbled the words to himself. Eswa Pajan Mori. Excuse me, I accidentally deleted the line. I remember this. Eswa Pajan Mori. Despite, here we go, the devil, and then he heard the devil mutter, quote, "That's not true." Despite being sure that he had spoken in no louder than a whisper, he realized that the words had an impact on the devil. Again, without thought, the young man shouted the words to the heavens, Eswa Pajan Mori. With that, the pouch exploded from the young man's trousers and hovered into the air right in the face of the devil, who now stood motionless without blinking, a look of sheer horror and terror on his face as he stared unendingly at the now pulsating pouch. After what seemed like a lifetime, the devil broke his shock to shout words of disgust and filth at the pouch, words spoken in a tongue not of men but of beasts, a language perceived by us as humans as mere snarls and roars, but in reality are spoken obscenities for which we have no words to equal. This disrespectful outburst prompted the bag to burst open, sending 13 streaks of light directly into the face of the devil. These beams shone in different colors, colors that seemed to match those of the unique shines from each of the stones. As the lights grew more intense and the devil more subdued, the young man could hear the faintest yet sweetest sounds of music coming from the bag. It was as if the stones were inside having a concert of their own, and the sound of it was something sweeter than the young man had ever heard, a beautiful music from a realm beyond, truly beautiful music. With a great flash and then a silent burst, the devil was gone, and the pouch lay on the ground, undisturbed, all stones in place. The young man stood astonished for a moment, his hands still clinging to his fiddle and bow, trembling. When he regained composure, he bent and reached for the pouch, but as he grasped it, it quickly corroded into ash. The stones, the pouch, and any trace of them had simply vanished into dust. A hand on his shoulder brought to his attention the old woman from the oasis in the desert, still wearing the same smile she wore all those years ago. She too began to fade before totally dispersing into pure light. She spoke no words, nor sung no songs, but there was an overwhelming feeling that took him as she held his shoulder and looked at him. Hope can never die. This was the feeling that the young man felt. Hope. The end. No traditional close. I forgot to add that. Oh, you're still muted, Miss Pratt. But thank you. I see your applause. Thank you.
I was saying, Ivan Govan, your story has come to an end. That was a beautifully written story, says Donovan Hepburn. A beautifully vivid story, right? It was very, very vivid. I felt as if I was in the story. It felt as if I was watching a movie. I could see all of the descriptions as you described them. And for somebody who felt hesitant for sharing your story because you felt as if it wasn't 100% Bahamian, this is exactly what a Bahamian story is and consists of. You had your figurative sayings in there, and of course, you had your chants and your songs, and you had your trickster type played by the devil himself. You know, usually our trickster stories are played by that old Barabi, that old Tifinus Barabi. That's what we like to call him. But this was such a beautiful story incorporating all of these Bahamian elements. I feel like you've been in Bahamian oral traditions, English 108, for a long time. This story is definitely publish worthy. For those of you who don't know, the whole purpose of this panel too is to get some of these student stories published so that we can have these newer stories to read and be able to relate to in these more modern times. And I feel like this story did just that. Justin, the chat, I'm sorry, Danielle. My apologies, Danielle. The chat is blowing up with comments for you. Everyone is in love with the story.
Yeah,
And
I
so,
see. Thank you, everybody. I'm deeply humbled and moved, and honestly, I just enjoyed writing it. So I'm glad y'all liked it.
so I would like to ask you just a few questions about your story, seeing as how it had so much depth. And you said you felt hesitant on writing the story because you didn't feel a real connection to your Bahamian roots, right? But you did a wonderful job. So I must know, what was your process of writing the story, and what did you learn throughout your writing and creative process of this story?
Well, similar to Justin, I kind of thought on it. Dr. Smith gave us the assignment. I think like the first week of class, he mentioned it. He like name dropped it. So I was thinking about it, and I kind of, again, similar to Justin, knew what theme or what lesson I wanted to portray. Just wasn't really sure how to go about that.
Uh-huh.
Um, I just honestly, like you said in the introduction, it kind of came from just my love of music. I love music. I write music. I've performed music. I've been on radios. I love music, and I love all things about it. And I also love writing. So like I love to read. I'm an avid reader. I love stories in any form that they take. I really do enjoy the art of storytelling from all over the world. It really is cool. But as far as why I went with what I went with, I wanted to create a story of basically strife. Like I know there are elements of like wonder, right? The young man is obviously supernatural in some way because he's like magical or whatever, but like he he is not perfect. So he still has flaws, and within those flaws, because of those flaws, he gets himself into a situation that he basically cannot surpass. And what the whole point, it may be elusive. I know it's hope, but like how hope like manifests in the story is just that like it's always alive in him. It's evident. The boy is like a positive light, but he got himself into a situation where hope has, as far for all intents and purposes, abandoned him. And only basically remembering the stories, the things that he's been in and the way he's been in his life brought that hope back to, reality. It's like the old woman in the desert told him. She's just like, she I mean, honestly, man, I don't fully know where it came from. I just started typing and it all kind of flowed. I knew that I wanted to write about someone who does music, who loves music, who has an encounter with the devil at some point. I knew I wanted to include songs that would reflect in some way Bahamian speak and how we talk. And yeah, and then it just kind of went from there.
Okay, really. So specifically, story for an audience of your age demographic who can relate to its message of hope.
Yes, ma'am. Exactly.
Okay.
And to be honest, like I was thinking of kids younger when I wrote it. Like that's why I included that's kind of why I wrote it the way I did, because I wanted it to. I kept thinking about how Dr. Smith would talk about how these original folk tales are stories that we essentially nowadays we tell our children. So I was thinking, how can I write something that is like there's not very much gray area. You want it to be kind of black and white, good and evil. This character's good, this one's evil. He runs into, so I wanted it to be in some ways relatable for children as well. Something that they could read or like kind of see in like a picture book brought to life, and they could be like, oh, this is so cool. It could easily be understood as a kid. It's like, oh, don't do evil, don't, you know, be good always.
Okay, nice. So your story definitely covers that because usually Bahamian stories are linear and they follow the good and bad narrative, right? They they go along that scope. There's always a good character and there's always a bad character. There's always a hero or an evil person. There are always the two poles represented in Bahamian stories. Now, you mentioned telling the story to children, right? So my last question is going to be, would you tell the story again? And if so, what would you do differently next time? So you emphasize wanting to tell the story to children and specifically writing it for children in mind. But what would you do differently next time to keep children engaged to your story?
The songs.
This
Easily,
song,
yes,
yeah.
ma'am. It would have
That
to,
is most important. So you can sit to us adults and you can tell us this story and you can speak your song and we can still get it. But in order to keep children engaged to your story, you you want to have a song in there, something that they can participate with and interact with and sing along with. And essentially that is why we have riddles incorporated in our Bahamian stories, because it was a way to allow the children to be interactive with the riddles, right? But this story, you have to sing the song next time, Danielle. You have to sing the song.
yes, ma'am. In fact, I won't tell you all that. Maybe I'll email you this small detail. But yes, ma'am. I know the songs. If I truly wanted to take this like a step further, the songs would have to be, they'd have to come to life.
All right. All right. So what I would just like to just touch on a little bit is about some storytelling techniques. Some storytelling techniques that we can employ to make our stories come to life even more. As you can tell, I've probably been doing this whole presentation using my hands, right? As Bahamian storytellers, our best technique beside our voice is the use of our body language, our attitude. You said it earlier. That really makes how we tell a Bahamian story. We have our voice, we have our attitude and our body language. Sometimes we have some props that we would use, right, to make the story even come alive. But we don't want to take away from the story too much. We want you to be fully engaged with our story. And I would like to mention that I am actually learning all of these things in a current storytelling course that I am now doing with the University of the West Indies in partnership with their Institute of Caribbean Studies and their faculties of humanities and education, led by Dr. Amina Blackwood Meeks, an amazing storyteller and cultural educator in Jamaica. Now, this is their first inaugural pilot storytelling course. So we see now that the resurgence for storytelling has hit such a pinnacle. We need a course for storytelling, right? And so I'm very honored to be taking part in this storytelling course and to be learning all of this information around storytelling, because of course it goes so much deeper than just telling a story. We need to learn why we tell these stories. To whom are we telling these stories to? For what purposes are we telling these stories for? You know, how will these stories shape us? How will they socially shape us? So there's so much more to storytelling than just actually telling stories, right? Now, we have one more story by UB student E. Day Thompson, who unfortunately couldn't be here. Well, actually, so we are looking to take a 15-minute break before the 12 o'clock panel. Okay. So I'm just gonna go straight into E. Day's story, and that way we can wrap up with some question and answers. That way we could, be finished in time for the next panel. So Ida Amari Thompson is a senior at the University of the Bahamas, studying English and history. His work tends to focus on questions of place and person, identity, and what it means to personally and socially inhabit circles. He grapples with questions of colonialism, independence, nation identity, and love. His primary medium is written work, particularly poetry. His written work has appeared in the Pre online journal, the first issue of Onyx magazine in 2018, a creative journal for diasporic Black writers based in the UK, and the NE9 exhibition, The Fruit and the Seed, and Refuge 2019, both exhibited by the National Art Gallery of the Bahamas. And Ede's story is entitled Sammy and the Poinciana King. Come here, my story. It won't be boring. You might just learn something. If you're not listening good, hey. Now, I know you know, even if you're old, big, and plump like one silk cotton tree, you never could have had before this tale I can spin. Now, this one old time thing, not a me or you time thing. This a damn time story. Way back when we ancestors still were slaves and we people used to jump around and dance and fire at night. Now, this was African practice that survived the Middle Passage. It used to make the enslaved feel at home and grow together stronger and stronger like one big family. But even more important, it was how the people used to talk to the ancestors. When the moon shine and the fire licking their skin in time to the goat skin drum, the spirits used to catch a hold of them and speak through their mouth. The spirits used to give warnings and foretell the future, telling the people where to plant and how many storms was coming in hurricane season. Now, there used to be this woman named Mabel. She used to love dancing in the middle of the fire. Now, the thing about Mabel, she was a beautiful woman with strong legs and arms from working all day. She skin shine like copper and flame, and all the men, them, and some women wanted to get to know her. But too bad for them, Mabel was already spoken for and had one child, Sammy. Sammy was a good-natured boy who was clever and quick of mind like his father. Because of this, he would always ask his mother to tell him about his father. He would run up on her and ask, Mommy, who my daddy is? All the other boys and girls know their daddy, but I don't. This would always upset Sammy because the children used to tease him and call him Poinciana Boy, all because Sammy's eyes were this vibrant light brown, circles in a deep red, just like Poinciana flowers. They even had a little rhyme. It went a little something like this. Red eyes, fire eyes, you look so red. Red eyes, fire eyes, you ain't from here. Yay, Teo, you must be a spirit child. Yay, Teo, you must be a spirit child. The children teased Sammy with this all of the time, to the point that Sammy never wanted to be around them. Instead, he would go exploring into the bush. He loved being in nature and especially loved climbing up into Poinciana trees. He would always feel this calm anytime he was in them, like he was protected and nothing could hurt him. He thought, this must be what having a father is like. But even stronger than his desire to know who his daddy was, Tommy just wanted to be normal and have brown eyes like all the other children. And anytime he would ask his mother, she would always tell him, your father was a big man, a strong man, a special man, and you are blessed to have his eyes. I know he ain't here, but Sammy, he love you. Now, go back to barking them coconuts so I can make more tarts to sell in the market. Now, even though Sammy was an obedient boy and loved his mother, as he lashed into those coconuts, his clever little mind was thinking of one way to slice into the truth about his father, or if he couldn't do that, to at least turn his eyes brown. That's when Sammy remembered about the fire dance, when the living could speak to the ancestors and ask questions and even receive gifts. And he knew exactly what he was going to ask for. Now, there was only one issue with Sammy's little plan: how he was going to be allowed to dance in the fire dance. He was still too young. He was only 8 and had to be at least 10 to even be allowed to go close to the fire, let alone be in it. But like I say before, Tommy was a sharp boy, and he had a plan to get into the fire dance to get his question heard. So even before his mother left to join the dance, Tommy made a little costume for himself from some banana leaf, dry bush, and poinciana flower. He turned the leaf into a short skirt and tied two boards, one from his back to his belly to make open a jacket. And last but not least, he stick the flowers in his hair to make it look like he was sprouting poinciana flowers from his head. With his costume in place, Sammy decided to sneak through the bush until he found the fire dance. As Sammy snuck closer, the rhythm got louder. He could feel the echo in his chest and a song that sounded something like this. Yo, yo, to mango, we calling on the fire spirit. Yo, yo, to mango, come, great fire spirit. Paja, jana, to low, to mango, be here as we jump in fire. Papa, jana, to low, to mango. Then, right when he was about to reach through the bush to see the full dance for himself, he heard a deep voice ask, "What you doing here, boy?" The voice stopped him in his tracks. To Sammy, it sounded like deep ocean mixed with a gentle breeze, the same feeling he felt when he sat in the poinciana branches. But for some reason, Tommy was also terrified, and the voice spoke again. "I say, what you doing here?" By this time, with a light chuckle in his voice. Somehow, Tommy was able to turn around, and standing before him was a giant of a man who was oddly dressed similar to Sammy, carrying a staff made from poinciana bark with poinciana podlings for shakers hanging from the sides and flowers on top. "I am the poinciana king," said the mysterious man. "I work the fire for the dance. I make the poinciana burn red, orange in the sun, and one day, Sammy, you gonna learn this too." Sammy was awestruck. Not only was this man dressed like him, but he looked like him too. They had the same smooth, dark skin, but most shockingly, the same light brownish eyes, circling red, what the people them called ferret eyes. "Why? Why you got the same color eye like me?" "Just 'cause you was my son, Sammy." "You was my daddy? Then why I never see you till now? Is it because you don't love me?" "No, son. It's because I is a spirit, and I can't be in the world of humans for too long, unless it is during special times of the year when when people hold ceremonies for me, like the fire dance. That's how I meet your mother. She was dancing at one of my dances and we fall in love." "That mean I have spirit?" say Sammy. "Yes, son. And one day you'll have to take over my role when I decide to stop coming to the mortal world like I did when your grandfather. But ever since you've been born, I haven't been able to cross over except the fire dances. And even though I couldn't be too far from the light of the fire, I think people are starting to lose respect for the ancestors. This has been happening ever since these loyalists come here, slowly changing the ways of our people. That's why I haven't been able to visit you, son. But come on, I think you're ready to join the fire dance now and learn how to be the next Poinciana king." With this news, Sammy was scared. He looked into the smoldering eyes of his father and saw a vision. A life of rhythm and fire flashed before his eyes. But he also thought about how he would lose everything he knew. "I ain't want to go. I ain't to leave my mommy. I want them to tease me no more. I just want to be normal." With tears seemingly dosing the burnished kindle in his eyes, Sammy picked up and ran back home through the bush. And Sammy, even though he could feel the pulse of the drums in his bones and sense the call of the fire's warmth in his blood, was still just a young child. And just like any scared young child, Sammy ran away and rejected his father and the life of the Ponciana king. When Sammy got back home, he was so scared that he decided he was never going to do a fire dance ever again. He wasn't even going to that. Now, since Sammy was supposed to take over his daddy's job when he grew up, this was going to be a problem. His mother, Mabel, did try to tell her son that it was nothing to be afraid of, but he wouldn't listen. He kept telling her, I want to be normal. I ain't want these fire eyes. And as time went on, the power of the fire dance was less and less. Eventually, people did stop dancing it because the ancestors wouldn't speak to them anymore. This was right around the time when the British should make a law saying the fire dancing wasn't legal no more, and people wasn't too keen on making trouble for a practice that didn't even work. And that's how Bahamian people did stop dancing around the fire at night. I glad you hear my story. I hope it wasn't boring. I bet you just learned something. If you didn't listen good. And that is the end of Ide Thompson's story, Sammy and the Ponciana King. Did you all enjoy that story? Man, you could take your mic off mute. It was a brilliant story, beautifully written, and it actually incorporated a lot of factual Bahamian history as to why the fire dance, or what we know as the jumping dance, became illegal. It also incorporated Bahamian sayings, as well as it had songs and singing, right? So it was a beautiful rendition of what an old story was or is, incorporating Bahamian oral tradition. Man, I need to hear more about the Ponciana King. I don't believe Sammy can just pass up his birthright just like that. I can't believe that. You know, we're going to need more from Ide Thompson. But at this time, I would like to open the floor up for any questions that any of you may have here about any of the stories that were shared today, or just about Bahamian storytelling and Bahamian oral traditions in general. Hillary says, yes, she would like to hear how he overcomes his fear of his spiritual calling. Right. I would absolutely love to hear that. Like, how does the story end? The story couldn't just end like that, man. We want Sammy to become the Ponciana King, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say if that's how it ends, even if it's not how it's kind of a sad story because, like you said, it has a lot of historical elements, and we living in 2021, we know, what happened to the fire dance. It pretty much just disappeared, right? And it's kind of sad to think about these people's traditions and customs, and their whole entire religion was essentially just threw to the cast to the side and eventually outlawed and ultimately completely wiped out. It's just kind of sad, at least on this side of the world. I'm sure maybe somewhere in the Congo they still practice these things, but I'm not sure. But here, it only lives in people like us talking about it.
That is correct. Someone asked for the name of the author to be repeated. Ide Thompson. Ide Thompson is the name of the author, and the story is called Sammy and the Ponciana King. And Danielle, you hit a very valid point. The story ends this way because essentially that is exactly what history did, right? We don't really find our jumping dancing circles anymore. We don't really find the fire dancing anymore. I'm a fire dancer. It is part of my Bahamian cultural repertoire as a storyteller. That is one of the many ways that I tell my stories as well, through fire dance. And I must say it was very hard even trying to find somebody to mentor me as an elder fire dancer because we have been so disconnected and cut off from that tradition, right? Because we've been told that it's too vulgar, it's too fresh, and all of these things that were always used to kind of devalue our own traditions, right? So the story speaks volumes to where we are as a people spiritually and ancestrally. Any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Princess, can I make a comment?
No problem, Dr. Smith.
Yeah. So I just wanted to congratulate the students and thank them for taking part in this. I know it was, like pulling teeth, especially for Daniel. He was really having a hard time thinking about, deciding to take part. And, I'm glad that he was able to, get over that fear and actually hear the response that people had for his
Mhm.
story, right? Because he was really nervous about that. And I think what your response to him was very well said, right? In terms of course, all of this is a part of it, right? There are certain things that we look for, but all of it makes up a part of the tradition. And so I was really happy that he decided to do that, and Justin as well, and Ide, and also I'm really happy to see the representation of young men, right? Who
Yeah,
are
he only had one
storytellers
one
as well.
female story.
Yeah, and based on one of the things that we were talking about in one of the panels yesterday with the book club, right? And all the representatives there were women, and we were like, well, what do we do? How do we get young Caribbean men to get more engaged in reading and writing and so on? And so I'm really pleased to see that we have these young men who are so adept at writing, right? And I hope that they can feel the encouragement from the audience, and maybe they'd be interested in following up with a minor. I know they have different majors, but a minor in creative writing where they can continue to stretch themselves and work towards building on the talents that they clearly already have and exhibit. So I just wanted
All
to
right.
say thank you to them and congratulations to them as well. And to, also say again, the point that you made, the point that we are actually trying to find publishers to, publish this stuff, because again, it is important to keep the tradition alive. And while we may not be in the situations where we're working in the fields to share the stories, or going to sit on grandma's front porch to listen to old stories, we can continue by recording them so that other people can be exposed to them as well. And so I'm really working towards finding a publisher so we can get some of these things published and recorded. So if anyone out there who knows a publisher, link a brother up.
Feel free to make that connection. So
Yeah.
Justin had asked that question, where can they see or read these stories again? So there you have your answer, Justin. We are looking to get these stories published. That is the whole part of what the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival is trying to do. Not just getting you to hear these stories, but to actually publish them, so that they can continue to be read for generations to come. Like how we grow up on Babuki and Barabi, the up and coming generations could grow up on your story, Justin and Danielle, and be fully inspired and motivated by that. So again, it is such an honor to see young men taking part in this rich cultural tradition. Very, very, very good. Very, very good.
And just to, so they're asking each other when they can hear each other's stories, but you will hear each other's stories in class, because, so with the class, the first part of it is to actually write the story, right? So they have to write their stories, they get some feedback and they revise it. And then later on in the semester, they actually have to present the story, right? And so this was good practice for them for later on in the semester, where they're actually graded for presenting, embodying the storyteller and the voices, and as you were saying, the gestures and everything. And so, you know, and the listening audience, if you are interested in you know, being a part of that session where we open up and, you know, and the students read their stories, I'm more than willing to open up the class and share the Zoom, so people who are interested can come and hear some of the stories. And these were only, we heard 3 of what was done for this semester. But Ide's story was written last semester, but there are so many more, even in this semester's there's so many really good stories. And so I'm really excited about the possibility of the publication.
So Hillary Booker says it would be amazing to see how local artists and animators might interpret these stories, right? Right? Because I mean, they come to life in such a colorful way. And I also want to throw out there, hey, I'm a storyteller. And so for those of you who write wonderful stories but are apprehensive on telling your stories, you may see yourself a better writer than actually reading the story or performing the story. I am also here to share your stories as well. You know, I don't only share my own stories. I'm a storyteller, so I read and I share stories. And I would absolutely love to share a few of your stories and, you know, share them with the greater public at large. Because for those of you who are unaware, tomorrow is actually World Storytelling Day, right? So tomorrow, storytellers from all over the world are going to be taking part in sharing their stories with the world, whether it's through video form or perhaps just, you know, posting a story or perhaps just taking a picture in their storytelling garb and showing their support for worldwide storytelling. So if any of you would like for me to share your story on World Storytelling Day tomorrow, I would be delighted to do so.
Hey, Princess, and I think that it's really important that we recognize what we're talking about here, right? We're talking about birthing an industry, right? Because if we have story writers who can sell their stories to storytellers, who can then sell their stories to animators that can then go on television or movies or whatever.
Or even movies.
Right. This is what we're talking about. Yeah, in terms of, you know, mining our Bahamian culture, and thinking about other ways outside. And, you know, I was going to say outside of just tourism, but this can also play into the tourist product as well, because when tourists come in and they want to buy books by Bahamians, or they want to go buy a comic book with these characters, or see a play or a film or whatever. And so we really need to think about, you know, these things that we think of as old timey and so on and so forth. This is definitely the way that we keep the culture alive and also monetize it, not in an exploitive way, but in a very authentic way, right? Where we're doing this work and we're sharing and we're building industry, we're building opportunities for more storytellers, for more animators, for more writers, and, you know, filmmakers. And, you know, it can products based on the characters, the devil character with the 13 arms, and right, little figurines and things like that.
This, like you said, this is an industry within an industry within an industry. Yeah. This is an industry that can spawn so many just different industries, because, you know, when we look around us now, we see that the world is enormous with storytelling in so many different forms, right? When you go on Instagram and you look at a person's bio, you see that they're a storyteller. So storytelling has taken on a new art form now. You know, it's not the same as it was before, and it can take on so many other different mediums that can provide so many jobs and opportunities for young Bahamians. We have the most folktales on this side of the Western diaspora. We collect stories. We can become a land of stories and host story festivals, and just bringing it back to the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival, this is even cementing and establishing the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival on a bigger level. Because here now we can have people bookmark the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival for next year who would want to come here and hear our stories in person, hear our poems in person, take a workshop in person. So, like Dr. Smith says, all of this is a part of our cultural tourism.
All right, Princess.
Any other questions?
Actually, I will ask you maybe take another 2 minutes, 11:44, and the next panel on Caribbean theater will start at 12. And so I would maybe ask you to, see if the panelists have any last words, and then we can wrap up. So we have maybe at least a 10-minute break before the next session.
Okay. Are my panelists still here? Is Daniel and Justin still here?
I'm here.
Excellent.
I just wanted to say quickly before we disperse, one, thank you so much to Dr. Smith, Princess Pratt, and Blue Flamingo, the entire festival, for the opportunity. And thank you to everyone in the chat or in the meeting for your feedback. I'm glad you enjoyed it. Just want to say, Dr. Smith, my hesitance mainly came from, this is like all about Bahamian, right? And like you said, like I said, it's not, my story wasn't like the most Bahamian, I guess, quote unquote. Y'all say it is, but I know it's doesn't feel that way. And I didn't want to use the platform to like expose my own work if I didn't truly feel like it was something of relevance to Bahamian oral traditions. And I'm glad you guys gave me perspective, helped me realize that it is. It does have a lot of elements of it, but I just didn't want to come on here and then tell a story that wasn't very Bahamian and have people feel like, oh, he's just using this so that he could tell his story. He don't really care about Bahamian, because I do really care about these things. It interests me. And this whole festival, I have class at 12, but I'm gonna catch some of the later segments, and I look forward to all of it, honestly. And also, Princess, if you were willing to read my story, I recommend you read Nikita's and Justin's as well, honestly. But if you could squeeze in any, if you could read ours, I'd be willing. I'd be more than willing to let you read mine. I have no problem with that.
Okay. Justin, any last words? Thank you so much, Danielle, so very much for sharing your story and for creating that beautiful story. And I just want to encourage you to continue to value your story, because you're a brilliant writer, and don't put yourself down thinking that you're not good enough. All right. Justin, you there?
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes, I'm here.
Yeah, we can hear you.
I just want to say really quickly before we go. Okay, thanks. I just want to say really quickly before we go, thanks for having me, and thank you to Daniel specifically for presenting yourself with me, because more than just a bit like a Bahamian writing, it's just like, that's just like a really good piece of writing. And it's very inspiring to me to be able to present my writing with you and at the same level as you. And it really, after this, I just feel so inspired and motivated to just, to keep just getting better and hopefully, one day get to your level of writing one day. So thank you for having me, and thank you for letting me share my story with you.
You're welcome. Thank you
The
so much.
honor is mine, Justin. You're a fantastic writer, storyteller, person as well. You always have good things to say in class, bro, always.
Thank you.
And I would just like to give the final thanks as well. I would like to thank the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival for this dynamic presentation, as well as for being consistent with giving us good quality presentations for the past 4 years. from Bahamian literary figures, whether they are old or whether they are young, like myself, for giving me this opportunity and chance to have a platform for up and coming generations to see that, you know, storytelling ain't just reserved for the older generation, but we can tap into that as well to continue to actually preserve this very rich culture of ours. I would also like to thank Dr. Smith for having me sit in on one or two of his Bahamian oral traditions, English 108 classes, and to share some of my storytelling, stories, journeys, techniques, as well as to hear the stories of his students. And I also want to thank all of you who joined us this morning. You know, you could have been doing something else, but you decided to start off your Happy Friday by indulging in this good, soulful storytelling presentation. So again, I just want to plug the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival one more time to let you know, if you are not following us, be sure to follow the Blue Flamingo Literary Festival on Facebook at www.facebook.com/BFLitFest, or you can find us on Instagram at Blue Flamingo Literary Festival. Thank you so much for joining us this morning. I will you all a wonderful day, and let's keep our oral traditions alive, all right? And let's see how we can support the next presentation up and coming. I think it's film and theater. So for those of us who can jump on that, let's go ahead and lend our support to that. But be well, everybody. Be blessed and take good care of yourself now.
All right, thank you. See y'all in the next session.
Good day, everybody. Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks.
Thank you. Good day.